You are listening to Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls, a podcast where three women discuss horror movies from the silent era through the 1970s. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, and Anchor. Timely, topical, terrifying. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls. And this time we are taking a step back from good movies, but not as far a step back as we did with Scream and Scream Again. And we're going to discuss The Abominable Snowman. It's a 1955 movie that is based, actually, a retelling of the BBC play, the TV play, The Creature, that was made in 1955. And as we just learned, this was actually a live showing, and there is no recording of it for The Creature. So that's why they remade it in 57. So not the only reason, but we actually all learned this today. We were debating whether or not it was a play or a TV movie, and what they meant by TV play. And what they meant by TV play was it was a one and done with a live audience and a live showing. So yay, we learned something new.
BBC used to do a lot of that. Like back in the day, they would just do stuff and then they would record over it. It would be gone forever. And goodbye.
I do wonder, yes, how much material that they've done that to that we don't have anymore.
It's true, but then based on The Abominable Snowman, I don't know that we're missing much with the loss of The Creature.
I'm gonna agree with you.
Another thing to note, this was actually the first of Peter Cushing's 22 Hammer films, but it's actually the second Hammer film that he made. So The Curse of Frankenstein was released first in 57, and then this one was released after, I believe. So they filmed this first, released the other one, then released this one. Very confusing, but there you go.
Yeah. I'm sure they had their reasons on delivery timing.
Well, because probably they knew the other one was much better. Because The Curse of Frankenstein, I haven't watched it in a long while, but I think it was a little more engaging. So it stars Peter Cushing, in case you haven't guessed from our babbling, who we are huge fans of, despite what the hell happened in Scream, Scream Again.
Another not his fault.
Yeah, no, it was not his fault. He was only in it for 30 seconds. There's only so much an actor can do in 30 seconds. He was in it throughout for The Abominable Snowman, and he was phenomenal. It's just a very boring film. They did nothing to... There was no suspenseful music to tie you in. There was no great, storyline.
Parts that make the most sense to have the suspenseful movement or music. The most suspenseful music happens at a time when there is literally nothing happening. It was the time his wife walked in to talk to the llama, and the llama wasn't there, and the monk scared her, and she passed out. It went pum pum.
Yeah, that was the only one. Yeah, it's this movie. I mean, it's got the classic, we are going in search of the Yeti. We're trying to find the monster. And then, the philosophical question of who's the monster.
Yeah. So the quick summary, sorry. Yeah. A kindly English botanist and a gruff American scientist lead an expedition to the Himalayas in search of the legendary Yeti.
And it is, the monster is man. Did you guys know that?
Is it?
No. Yeah, it's a theme that's been addressed in sci-fi and horror for ages. Yeah, I'm sure since the beginning of the genre.
My husband said, "Oh, I'm starting to see a theme here. So all of these movies are about how man is the real monster." And I was like, "Yes, yes, it is. You are correct. Every single one of them. Dracula, man is monster." The Mummy, man is monster. Yes, it's us. It's always us.
Godzilla, Mothra.
Yeah.
It's
some way, shape, or form. It's always us. Yes. Somehow it's always us. Yes. Man is the real monster. Yes.
Yeah. I admit, going into this before, I didn't have, huge expectations. I'm like, okay, it's a 1950s creature feature. Which not quite, because you never, creature features, I think more of you actually see the monster in the rubber suit, a little bit more. Uh, this one, I think, was going for the suspenseful angle where, the looming threat that you don't see. Da, 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 you know.
Yeah.
And in
Which they
that
did a terrible
regard,
job.
yeah, I mean, in that regards, I think that was a good decision. But agree, this movie overall, very middle of the road, mediocre, just kind of there.
Yeah. And to go off your point, where they failed is because so you have nothing, leading into it. So the suspenseful draw was not there. There wasn't like sudden sightings and then they're gone for most of the movie. There wasn't like a an engaging something that happened that draws you in. All it was literally you had Peter Cushing's character who was apparently slightly obsessed with the idea of finding a Yeti. Then you have Forrest Tucker who plays Dom Friend, who is the profiteer off of it. Like he's there looking for it so he can capture it and bring it back, sort of in a King Kong sense of the way, so he can bring it back for people to pay money. And plus he was part of a sham, the wolf children of India, where he wanted to redeem his name with like, the real Yeti. But like when you see them, like the whole start of it, there's no real draw in. There's just
Oh.
we're gonna go do this, and there's the tooth, and then there's the the tooth that kind of looks like a banana to me. But
Well, it certainly didn't look like anything that came out of the face that we later see.
Yeah, agree.
It
was
looked like a
little tusk.
saber-toothed tiger tooth. Like, if it was going to be out of anything, it would be like a cat or like a mammoth or something, but not a
Warthog with a little, yeah.
And it's one
an
of the
orc.
things that I wonder about because as I mentioned to you guys earlier, I did like a little bit of looking around, and the crew was always calling Peter Cushing props Cushing because he would just pull like random shit out and whatnot and improvise. And I wonder, since you mentioned it didn't look like anything like the creature, which I hadn't really put together yet, I'm wondering if that was something he came up with.
She just presented it on set, like,
yeah, and not something that the prop people designed. And so he may not have known what the creature was supposed to look like, and so he just, pulls the shit out of his ass.
It's possible, but I think I found what you were reading because I was like, I didn't see that. So I looked up the trivia, and it sounded like that actually he had that as the real prop, and then was finding other random shit as props.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. That's just my interpretation when he read it. So it could have just been something he's like, look, here's the tooth. Who knows? I mean, but it did not play well at all. And then I thought it was even funnier because there's Forrest Tucker's Tom Friend going, yeah, this is a reliquary where they usually put saint stuff in it, and I'm like, this shit is so much older. Like if you're talking about something that came out of Tibetan Himalayan monastery, this far predates almost it being a saint reliquary. I'm like,
and I think they had similar things. I think I'm not entirely certain. I would have to check.
Yeah, I mean throughout like Tibetan, a lot of the it's similar to, and please forgive my ignorance, a lot of it's similar to like the Hindu religion. It goes up into Tibet. There's more and there's variations, so there's a lot going on. So, but there are artifacts and stuff that they have that they tie into their religion that are supposed to be,
I would assume.
But,
I mean,
but like the way he was just like reliquary for saints and like, and I understand that you're probably trying to give a context for Western audiences about what was there, but I just thought it was funny the way they made it sound like it was Christian saint things.
We also have to talk about the fact that the Lama himself was German, so
yeah,
have a German accent. Like Steph was like, "Where's he from? The Bronx?" Which made me laugh.
That actor's name is Arnold Marley, so just if that helps you. Clearly not somebody who is Tibetan on any level.
Certainly not. I mean, I didn't expect it, but also like he straight up looked like somebody's uncle. Like,
yeah, and he was German, for real, the actor.
I thought I picked up German. Like he sounds German. I don't know why they just ended on this actor, but
the only even like vaguely appropriate casting, I guess, in that terms, they cast a lot of extras that were like, staff at Chinese restaurants in London. And they did hire somebody from a Buddhist temple to choreograph the chanting scene or not, but yeah, their choice of the llama, I'm like, would it have killed you to at least try to get somebody who might look the part?
Yes, it would have.
Apparently so.
I was gonna say that guy also played it in. Most of the cast came straight over from the play. The only person who didn't was Frank. So I'm gonna guess
Tom?
that they just or Tom, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna guess that they just ported him right over. They didn't even try to recast.
Sure. Yeah.
But okay, let's talk about the llama. I like how he was just like, yeah, this is just a carved bone. It's not a tooth. Like he totally tried to gaslight everybody.
Oh,
He's like, there's no Yetis. You're just insane.
There are no Yetis. You guys are crazy.
You silly Westerners meddling in things that you should not. Well, which is true, but
I'm like, that part's not wrong. I mean, I don't blame him. I don't think he's wrong. It's just like, no Yetis. You're just silly white boy. It's just something we made up for the tourists.
Right? Like we just tell you guys that so you'll come here.
Yeah. From what I understand, some of the impetus for making this was supposed Yeti sightings in the early 50s.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure it's an enduring legend, much like Bigfoot is Sasquatch, around here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So no doubt that there's probably been several sightings, and most people climbing Mount Everest probably are hallucinating from the thin air to begin with. So
yeah. Well, because it was Hillary and Norgay that had one of the reports.
Yeah.
So
I thought the way they filmed. Go ahead. Sorry, Betsy.
I was gonna say there's just so much exposition before anything even remotely related to the Yeti comes up, because we're talking about a tooth that doesn't even appear for 20 minutes in the film. Before that, they're talking about plants and how this one white guy really hates being at a temple because he thinks Tibet is stinky.
And he doesn't like Tibetan tea, and
right, and he doesn't like how it smells, and he doesn't like the people, and he doesn't like the cold, and so we spent a good 20 minutes of listening to white guys whine about being in Tibet before we ever even found out that the real reason they were there was the Yeti.
Yep.
Well, to be fair, that was kind of part of the storyline, that you weren't supposed to know the real reason they're there, because the other two characters, the wife, Peter Cushing's character's wife, Helen, and then Peter Fox, the other doctor that was there studying the plant life, thought they were legitimately there studying,
plant life,
and the flora in the area. So you have the actress that plays Helen Rawlinson is Maureen Connell. Sorry, I want to put an O in there for some reason. And she does a really great job of playing the pissed off wife, passive aggressive 1950s pissed off wife. When she finds out that this was her husband's goal, she's like, no, this is dumb. And this guy's clearly shady as fuck. You're not going up the mountain with him. And he's like, no, I am.
I love the way how the llama dropped it on purpose
to get her riled up.
Yeah, that's very well done.
The llama totally snitched on Peter Cushing's character.
He how did the scene go? It pretty much like Helen was coming over to drop off jar for samples and whatnot, and the llama is talking to her, and I'm sorry about the accommodations, blah, blah, blah. And, you'll be under my protection when your husband goes on his climbing mission. And I was like, oh, snap.
She's like, climbing mission?
She's like, what?
And also, here's another thing to think about. So the whole time they're in this area of Tibet with the monastery, they're running around in like hoodies, like like the equivalent of it. It's fucking freezing cold, and they're like
well, even their climbing gear, they didn't give very good representation.
very minimal.
Uh, because you'd want to wear a little more than that. You're in the Himalayas; it's going to be below freezing all the fucking time.
But they're like, we just got a hat and some mittens. We'll be good.
Yeah.
But they were actually in Surrey, and so
Fair.
Yes. Well, there was some filmed in the French Pyrenees, but they were using doubles for a lot of that stuff, which I did find interesting. They did some filming by cable car, and they actually did some helicopter shots, which I was surprised because I figured this was much more low budget.
Well, that's where all the budget went, which is why the monster was an arm and a face made out of paper mache.
With like a really long nose. It looked like somebody just, I don't know what they were thinking.
It straight up looked like there's a movie nobody needs to watch. Actually, watch it. It's really good. Julie Taymor did a version of Fool's Fire. We've talked about this, where she used these really big puppets and then just two humans in it. And they were little people. It was Michael Anderson from Twin Peaks and such. And then I forget the other woman's name. Sorry. She was lovely. She was French. I don't remember her name. But it looked like one of those puppets. Straight up just looked like one of those puppets to me. Like the face of it. And I'm like,
Henson-esque.
yes. Yeah. But not like big,
but
scary
predated
things.
Henson, don't get me wrong.
It's kind of like the creatures in Labyrinth who threw their heads.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's a little bit what it reminds me of.
But it was not scary. It was just weird.
And I'll admit, I had a hard time paying attention. Like at some point, apparently they captured one in a cage that was small or something, and I never even.
They didn't. What they said is they captured a monkey, which was true. That's what they captured.
Okay, is that what happened? I told you I watched this movie like 3 times, and I keep blinking in the wrong
They captured one of those Arctic monkeys that you see like in the big pools up in the Andes, like in the mountains where they would have like the monkeys that go into like the hot springs. They captured one of those. And then the guide that they had lied to them and said, yes, this is a Yeti.
That's a Yeti.
Yeah.
The guide.
It was small. It was, I mean, it could fit in that cage. It was not a Yeti.
Okay, that's what they got.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cause I admit too, I had trouble paying attention to this movie, frankly, just from the fact that it was kind of boring.
Slow and boring.
Yeah, but your mind kind of wanders a bit, let's face it.
I will say, admit, at one point this afternoon, I was just like kissing my husband instead of watching. That is true.
I was cousin Bob.
I will say is where it had potential, where they were kind of doing what could have been a good job, well, which wasn't a bad job, it just wasn't enough, is when they start hallucinating.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was like the most active part, and it was interesting. And I that drew me in, and that's what I remember most about the movie. Mm-hmm. And it was well done, but they didn't play up on it enough. Like they didn't build suspense through it. They didn't put in the good soundtrack to draw you into it. It was just like you had it was so quick. Like you had just a scene and a half of where you can tell that things like were going wrong in their minds, and you weren't really sure if it was the high altitude or some magic from the Yetis or but
there's in my head where I'm like, I know why they put in the wife character, because they were building up that he has someone to go back to and someone who would care about him to go and find him, which is fine. And I would never cut out a female character. She was wonderful. And honestly, some of her scenes were my favorites.
But Peter Cushing was also the part of the pushing for that character, for the reasons you mentioned.
I feel like a more successful movie would have started with them already on the expedition, knowing that they were going to find a Yeti. This was what they were trying to do. And then watch the slow descent into madness as they go through, where it becomes very dark, and then like the one time when the one guy was hearing the voice, I was trying to decide if it was that he was hearing things, he was hallucinating, or if the Yetis were mocking the voices of those around them and luring them out.
Possible.
Yeah.
And that's been really interesting too, because who do you trust? You can't trust your own people. You can't trust the voices. You know, if you have a scene where a guy gets called out and it's a Yeti that is there instead of like somebody, this would be really, really interesting. But it feels like they took it they got it, they had ideas, but they didn't take them to the next level of them being fully developed. Because you're right, that scene where he's hallucinating and he's like, I can hear him. We've got to go save him. We left him.
Yeah.
That's
Or
the most
Peter
interesting.
Cushing hears a radio when the radio is broken. And, I
Right.
mean, there's all these options where they like it happened and it was interesting. And like you said, there's whole these theories, like, is it the Yetis? Because that was one of the things that Peter Cushing's character comes out with, that he's like, these creatures are clearly more sophisticated than we thought, which is when you come into the whole, we're the monsters. They're just waiting for us to die out so they can reclaim what is theirs, because we're the ones destroying the world. They're just living happily up here on a mountain, clearly smart enough to be able to do it and evade capture and proof of their existence and stuff. So,
I
as
feel
we know,
like,
the common theme.
yeah, I feel like they spent so much time on exposition at the beginning that that shit didn't need to be there. If you had done
Yeah.
a tidy job of the adventure, of starting out in the adventure, you would have had those baselines established just as well and much quicker. And you could have devoted more time to the psychological aspect. Am I hearing things? Am I hallucinating because of lack of oxygen at the altitude? What?
Well, yeah, it's like Betsy pointed out, we could have started straight into the expedition
Yeah.
without having all the exposition where, oh, we're here
Yeah.
for plants. Oh no, we're actually doing this. Straight into the mountains,
Yeah.
straight with them going, it's crazy, straight with them conjecturing, is it the Yetis throwing their voices? Is it them hallucinating? Is it,
Right. Because even like him having been on failed missions before and having seen something could have been fed in without us ever seeing his wife or the other botanist or any of that in the camp. And then if they wanted to shoot back to that and see the llama being like, they're never going to make it back because we know like this is too smart and too good and it's going to get bad out there and they're going to hallucinate. Hell, the llama himself could be like, they're not strong enough of mind to be out there. And then we know that they're hallucinating. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there were ways to do it.
exactly.
They didn't do it that way. And instead it was, like we said, it has long periods of nothing really happening. Boring film, truly boring at times. When
bunch
they
of the
came
wrong
out,
backstory that didn't need to be
Yeah.
there, like the guy who shouldn't have been on a climbing expedition, but was a good photographer. Like, I didn't need to know that about him. Who gave a fuck?
no.
Was he the one that jumped off the mountain in a psychosis from the creature, from what we assume is the creature?
Yes, excuse me. Yeah. He was also the one. Here's another stupid thing, like I have to point out. So, like, two of them were lagging behind because the guy couldn't really climb. And so Peter Cushing's character stayed back with him. The character's name was McNee. And the other two, which is Forrest Tucker is Tom Friend, and I think what's the other guy's name? I don't
Shelley.
remember.
They called him
Something
Shelley.
Shelley.
Was that
Yeah,
Shelley, who was
Yeah.
just like I think he was just like a
Henchman.
weapons expert
Yeah.
/ henchman, get to the campsite first. And these motherfuckers go and set up like spring traps and shit. Like they're like, aren't aware of the fact that the other two people aren't there and that they might step on them. No. And of course, what happens is when Peter Cushing and Michael Brill is the actor that played McNee, when they show up, McNee steps in the middle of a spring trap. Like, that is like the most irresponsible, stupid thing. And I guess it does set up the fact that now you're supposed to realize that Tom Friend and Shelley are just idiots that are just profiteering and don't really care what they heard or how they heard it.
They don't.
So to be fair, Tom Friend wanted it live. He didn't want a dead thing to be brought back. He wanted a live capture, but
right. He wanted a live capture. Yeah. Which
but
of course
still,
then
it's
comes
like,
back later, because later the one guy's there, like, he didn't even get off a shot. And he's like, wait a minute, he did get off a shot. You gave him blanks. Because he didn't want him to kill it. So he gave him blanks. He put him against a Yeti with blanks. What a cold-hearted dude.
Well, and then the guy who's shooting the blanks at the Yeti, it apparently dies of terror.
yeah,
Peter Cushing's
shock or
like,
a heart attack.
You killed him. To Friend.
That was probably my favorite scene, honestly. You killed him. Like, I was like, he's right. You did.
Peter Cushing had some good lines in this, I thought.
I
You know,
enjoyed
though, I'm
Cushing.
curious. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just
No,
gonna say, did the Yetis actually physically kill any of them? Because McNee, just walked off, as we were saying, he walked off the cliff.
I don't think
And there's something where you
so.
can see his body shatter, which is clearly they dumped a mannequin off it and look at
Yeah.
But and then Shelley died of shock, and I can't remember, how did Tom Friend die? Did he just did he Yeti kill him, or did he like die of exposure or something too?
well, it's kind of like Cushing comes out of the tent and tries to find him, and he's gone already. And it was
Mhm.
like the snow was so bad that I think he just died of exposure.
Avalanche? Wait, didn't he die of avalanche?
Yeah,
Maybe,
maybe.
could be
What?
something happened, but
Like
like
he
the Yetis, I don't
tried
think
to
directly
friend.
kill any of them.
No,
No.
because I think friend at some point, like after Shelley dies, at some point, friend is out there with a gun and fires, and you see, avalanche scenes. So
And that may
Okay,
be.
good.
All I remember is Cushing then coming back out and being like, friend,
yeah,
friend, friend, and he's gone. And then he goes back into the tent.
Yeah, and then eventually ends up outside the cave half frozen. His wife comes to the rescue, which props to Helen, the wife.
yes, I do like that. But
She and the other botanist end up yeah, running up the mountain, because she just has, well, one, she sees the one porter that actually went up the mountain. The character's name was Kusang, and he was played by Wolf Morris, and he ended up playing this role, and like a bunch, anything that had an Abominable Snowman that was like filmed in England for the next like 10 years, Wolf Morris played a porter
it's great. I love that.
going up the mountain in it. So like Doctor Who episodes, whatever else, it was just
Yeah,
gonna be.
it's
And I
funny. I
have to say,
didn't
like, he at
see
least
that.
looked the part much better than like Arnold Morley did of the llama. But
Oh,
but Wolf
for the
Morris is
most
an English
part,
actor, but he's clearly darker skinned and probably has
yeah.
some other.
Well, and too, when you see him, he's in that like the Parker type stuff a lot of it with Hood and the fuzz, so it
Yeah,
obscures him a little bit better, I think, and helps make it a little bit more almost like
yeah,
he is an appropriate casting.
yeah, looks much better. But yeah, but I just thought that was funny. It's like, you want to talk about a weird typecast again. You're just always going to be the porter going up Mount Everest looking at Jenny's. That's your life now. But dude was probably like, "That's fine, pay me." Whatever.
Yeah, do work, get paid.
I mean, that's it.
But
Yeah,
yeah, Helen ends up running up the. Well, they try to gaslight the shit out of Helen too, by the way, because she
I
sees
love it.
Kusang in the courtyard, and everybody's like, "No, no, no, you didn't see that. You're just
and
nuts."
somebody else. Yeah, and she's
But
like,
yeah,
"Well, push it, we're going."
something's not right. We're going.
Mm.
And well, there's the other subplot, which isn't really a subplot, but you know what I mean, with the porters that brought Tom Friend and company up to where the monastery was to begin with. Tom Friend never paid them. He's like, "We'll pay you when we get back." And these porters are like, "Dude's not coming back. Where's our money?" And they start like harassing any
Yeah,
white person they see at that point. Like, "Where's our money?" But somehow, well, I guess Helen and Peter Fox, the other botanist, are like, "We'll pay you if you go up the mountain with us to try to find him." And so they're like, "Okay, I guess." Which I bet
Oh,
those poor
fine.
bastards never got paid. But yeah, and there's
Well,
Helen
I
climbing
feel
up the
like
mountain,
she
no
would have
hat,
paid
hair
them.
blowing in the wind, finding her husband who looks like, a Peter Cushing popsicle, and somehow survived.
yeah.
Surprised that they end up down back at the monastery, and like Peter Cushing as Dr. Wallace is like, "No, there's no Yetis, you're right."
The creature I was searching for, like he either said isn't up there or doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting line because it sort of implies that he was looking for some kind of animal-like creature, and he found something else. So technically, he didn't say that creature isn't there. He said what he was looking for wasn't there.
Right.
And I'm like, that's a nice way to put it. It's a little ambiguous. No.
I've told you something, and it wasn't a lie, and that's important.
It's saying the truth without saying the truth, without saying all of it.
Yeah. I mean, basically, look, the whole point of that was him saying, "Look, I understand now. Don't kill us. We're not going to tell anybody about what's up there."
Yeah, exactly. There was so much subtext, and that was the one little piece of dialogue that I did really enjoy.
So I don't know. I mean, I would just say my general thought is it's kind of a pointless movie, but at least it's not Scream and Scream again. And it does have good acting.
Yeah, I thought Peter Cushing was very good in it.
The first thing that Seth said was, I mean, he's so hot in a British repressed sort of way. Like, he should be wearing a tweed jacket. But, like, right.
Peter Cushing is lovely.
He was so very British. So very British. And it's interesting seeing such a young Peter Cushing, too, because he's so much younger than what we're used to seeing him as.
He's very young and very, like, genteel and good looking, which is honestly not what I'm used to seeing in my Peter Cushing. So I was like
thinking of him as Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars. Yeah.
Yes, a little bit older, still refined, but a little older. And this was a very young, kind of spry Cushing. I don't know. He's pretty dashing as far as that goes.
It's nice eye candy.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all. I'm like, all right.
Oh, so I keep reading that like in 2013 they were going to do a remake of it, but apparently nothing ever came of it because I've seen nothing recent about it.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, like it's not like there hasn't been other really, really horrible Abominable Snowman movies that are made by like the Sci-Fi Channel out there. So maybe one of those.
Yeah.
But
I think to redo it would be, I hate to say this, I think to redo it would be kind of pointless. It's been done again better. Honestly, a lot of it reminded me of like Creature from the Black Lagoon-ish, only on a mountain. Yeah, but not as good. Even like there was a scene where the hand of the Yeti came into the tent.
Yeah, that
very
scene.
much like that.
And I was thinking about in Creature when the hand comes up and in and was like getting the one guy, and I was like, but it was so much better done. Like this one was just kind of fur with claws kind of random on it. It wasn't a well-formed hand, really. It looked like a Muppet. So
Which to be fair, Creature of the Black Lagoon was 1954, so it did come out before this. So they probably did try to take elements of the Creature from the Black Lagoon and put it here, not so successfully.
Yeah, I feel like if they tried to remake it, I don't know that there's anything new that they could bring it to make it worthwhile.
I mean, better creatures.
I have better creatures, but that's not it.
I think if you were to take this and turn it into anything, it would have to be like a The Thing style.
Yes. You can make it a psychological horror thriller.
Psychological horror driven, where driven insane, and then there's a real tangible monster. But The Thing happened and it was real good. So I don't think we need to put it clear up a Himalayan mountain.
Yeah, so anything else, ladies?
Not really. Sorry, I'm trying to keep the dog from chasing the cat here. It's much like I've said, it's just kind of a there movie. It's not anything good and it's not anything bad. Your attention is gonna wander, you're gonna be bored, and you'll probably, unless you're watching it for research for a podcast, you might not sit through it all. And that's okay.
Yeah, even as far as like 1950s creature features go, it's not campy fun like some of the other ones where it's like he turned into an aunt and that kind of stuff. It doesn't have that either, so it's not campy fun. It's well acted, but it's too well acted for what you would need it to be campy, and it's not good enough to be good like Prestige. So it's somewhere in this middle ground of just kind of
definitely
okay.
Yeah, that's a very accurate statement. It's in between everything, which is why I think maybe it's mediocre.
It's just a mediocre film. It's not anything to write home of. There are far better Hammer films, far campier Hammer films that you can have fun with. And I mean, it was free to watch.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's got going for it. It was very free.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it was a waste of Peter Cushing. Not as big of a waste as Scream and Scream again, but I mean, if you want to just watch it for like really good acting, do it. But just understand you're really gonna drift on this one. And where you can currently see it free is on Fossum. The app is Fossum, and it's commercials, but it's not that bad. And but yeah, I mean, if this movie had got lost to obscurity, you would have lost nothing really. There's just far better out there, and obviously far worse. But I mean, you won't be mad that you watched it
Yeah.
since we warned you. But you also there's so many other things you could do with your day that would be much more edifying. Let's put it that way.
I was gonna say the only thing you're really out if you watch it is time, and it just depends how valuable is your time to you.
Mhm.
Are you
I mean,
someone
you
who
can knit,
does?
crochet, read a book while you're watching.
I was gonna say, are you someone who needs to have a noise behind while you're doing stuff that you can ignore? This is a good ignoring noise because the British accents are pleasing and it does nothing.
I cross-stitched during part of it. I will admit.
Yeah, I definitely did a
Update your
tarot reading
journal.
in the middle of the first watch, so
Pet your dogs. There's do the vacuuming. Have it on while you're doing the house cleaning. It's fun. But and the thing is, like, I honestly like the way it felt like I said, I kept blinking and missing certain things, but it didn't ruin the movie. So I wasn't really sure that what the hell was in the cage. Didn't actually matter from watching the movie.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't bother me enough to watch it a fourth time. Let's just put it.
Watched it twice. That's enough.
same.
So yeah. At any point you could put it on, you'll have enough of the plot that you'll be able to follow it. So
I mean, they're looking for a Yeti. Eventually they find a Yeti? Question mark? And
people die.
That's it.
And consequences ensue. Yeah.
It
Well,
was
much like I said Saturday, I think I'm gonna have to watch this a second time because I just can't pay attention.
and that was another thing. So there was like scenes where I was watching it. I wasn't sure if there was more than one expedition group going up there and who they were focusing on when, which added to confusion for me. But it wasn't, again, confusing enough to piss me off, and it wasn't interesting enough for me to try to figure out. Like,
I'm not sure, but I really
might
don't
be more than one
care.
expedition. Don't know what happened to the other one. Don't particularly care what happened to the other expedition.
the
I
other
assume
one-
they were not looking for Yeti.
I did
They
catch
were
that
probably
line
just
today. There was another expedition, but they were just climbing to
in
climb.
the mountain.
They weren't looking for the Yeti, and so they were taking the easier path because the llamas won't, or the Tibetans won't take them up the path that they were going to find the Yeti. Just when you're going up the mountain, it's a different path. I did
Which
catch
is funny
that.
that they would take you up to find the Yeti when they don't want you to find the Yeti.
Exactly. So they take you up a different way. But I caught that today and went, what? Why do we care? Like, what? Why are you pointing out those people who aren't going to take the same path as us? Well, they're not looking for a Yeti. Oh, okay.
I mean, I guess it's just so you know that if you're going to climb Mount Everest, tell them specifically that you are not looking for Yeti so that you get the easy path up.
All right.
Take
I will
note.
remember that for when I go to climb Mount Everest, because obviously I look like the kind of girl who's going to do that at any point.
Remember, all the corpses on Everest were once highly motivated people. Don't be one of those.
I guess that's a closing note.
That's the perfect way to end this.
So thanks for bearing with us. If you want, go watch The Abominable Snowman on Possum. If you don't want to, that's fine. This is not one that any of us are going to be like, no, really watch it.
Yeah.
Who fucking cares? And just remember, all the corpses on Mount Everest were once highly motivated.
We need a shirt. That's merch. That's what that is.
This has been Girls Ghost Girls, and I'm Jenny.
Rebecca.
Betsy.
Have a great night.
Ah.
You have been listening to the Girls Go Schools podcast. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Girls Go Schools podcast, on Twitter at Girls Ghost Pod. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Girls Go Schools podcast, and find our podcast on your favorite podcast